Shalom. This week we are reading Parashat Lech Lecha, third Torah portion in the book of Bereshit, Genesis, beginning in chapter 12. The words Lech Lecha literally mean go for yourself, which can be understood as go for your own benefit. But these words also convey a deeper connotation of go to yourself, or even go into yourself, indicating a journey of self-knowledge, an inward journey of self-awareness. The Parashat tells us of God's call to Avraham, whose name is later changed by God to Avraham, as his wife Sarai's name will be changed to Sarah. Lech Lecha tells us of Avraham's journey from his birthplace, his descent into Egypt, tells us of the strife between his shepherds and those of Lot. We learn of his somewhat mysterious participation in the War of the 4 and 5 Kings, an event on the scale of a world war for that time, whose apparent true goal was the attempt to kill Avraham and to stop him, and to stop the spreading of his ideas. Isaiah chapter 41 and verse 2 refers to Avraham's involvement in this war with the words, "Who aroused from the east the one whom righteousness accompanied? He placed nations before him, and over kings he gave him dominion. He made his sword like dust, his bow like wind-blown stubble." In this parsha we learn about Hagar and the birth of Ishmael and Hagar's dynamic with Sarai. We learn about the pivotal yet cryptic event known as the covenant between the portions, at which God informed Avraham that his children would suffer a period of exile and would afterwards be redeemed. And we learn of the commandment of circumcision. So there were 10 generations from Adam to Noah. In Noah's time, with the exception of himself and his family, all belief was lost. Civilization was a failure. And after the flood as well, the Torah recounts mankind's struggle for identity and belief. As another 10 generations progress from Noah to Avraham, no one is holding on to knowledge of the one God and the purpose of life, namely to know God. As our sages say, God had no one to talk to. Nobody was looking for him. This portion of Lech Lecha focuses on the first part of the life of our patriarch Avraham, the great spiritual seeker. But it doesn't actually explain his amazing emergence from anonymity into God consciousness. It doesn't explain how his career actually began. Parashat Lech Lecha recounts the first recorded parts of his life, but doesn't provide answers to the biggest question. How did Avraham discover God, especially considering the times into which he was born? Where did he come from? Who taught him? And what made him different from all the rest? Avraham had no teacher. He taught himself. As the sages put it, his own 2 kidneys taught him wisdom. In other words, he followed his own intuitive wisdom. Avraham's past is obscure, and the written Torah does not clarify the nature of the life he led leading up to his godly revelation. But a universally acknowledged, solid tradition informs us that as a youth, Avraham clashed with the ruling authorities on account of his faith, and that he was condemned to death and thrown into a fiery furnace by King Nimrod, and that he miraculously emerged from that furnace unscathed. Indeed, in the conclusion of last week's Torah portion of Noach, when Avram's genealogy is first mentioned, we are informed that Avram's brother Haran died in a place called Ur Kasdim, and afterwards the verse states, Terach took his son Avram, and Lot the son of Haran his grandson, and his daughter-in-law Sarai, the wife of Avram his son, and they departed with them from Ur Kasdim to go to the land of Canaan. They arrived at Haran and they settled there. It's in Genesis 11:31 and 32. Tradition maintains that Ur Kasdim, literally the fire of Kasdim, is a veiled reference to Nimrod's fiery furnace. Midrash relates that at Avram's judgment, King Nimrod also questioned Avram's brother Haran as to where he stands on these matters of faith in one God, and Haran withheld his decision pending Avram's outcome. When he saw that Avram emerged safely from the fire, Haran also declared his allegiance to the God of Avram, but as his decision was insincere, based only upon expediency, he was consumed by the flames. So this Ur Kasdim is the prehistory, Avraham's backstory. We know that he had searing disputations with his contemporaries over God, and finally, the establishment leaders condemned him to death for his belief. But to their dismay, he didn't die. This is alluded to in the book of the prophet Isaiah, in chapter 29 and verse 22, where we read, "Thus said Hashem, who redeemed Avraham," who saved Avraham, saved him from Nimrod, that is. Emerging victorious from this test, he became the equivalent of a media star. His deliverance from the fire became a household word. He traveled extensively, he lived a life of selfless dedication, and publicized the knowledge of one God. The Midrashim, the teachings of the sages, are replete with many stories that tell of Avraham's early path, the circuitous route that led him to discover God. In his great work, The Guide for the Perplexed, Maimonides writes that in the early days before his revelation, Avraham suffered greatly as he attempted to find the truth. But he discerned the way of truth and understood God's justice through his own understanding, through his penetrating contemplation and study of the laws of nature, and his intense yearning for truth. Ultimately, he was able to recognize God's presence on his own. He understood that there has to be one God who runs the world, who created everything, and there's no God but him. The Midrash relates to the process of Avraham's spiritual maturation through a parable. Rabbi Yitzchak taught, it's like the story of a person who goes from place to place and sees a building burning. He says, could it be that there's no one in charge of this building? And so the owner of the building suddenly jumped up and appeared to him and said, I am the master of the world. Because Avraham is the first person who called the Holy One, blessed be he, master, the master appeared to him. This is why the Torah suddenly begins the story of Avraham with Hashem's command to him to leave without prefacing it with details about his life and why he merited this. The Midrash illustrates that Avraham traveled and examined all the world's philosophies and false doctrines, and as a result of his independent examination, he came to his conclusion, and suddenly the Master himself revealed himself to him and illuminated his path, a path which he reached through his own efforts. And those efforts were not only intellectual. Avraham was driven by heart and spirit, by passion and emotion. Ultimately, after all his inquiries, it was his solid, simple, and steadfast faith that brought him to the reality of God. Avraham, himself called the first of the converts, converted masses of humanity to this belief and faith, personal faith in one God. That's why he's known as the father of monotheism. And because he's so identified with the one God, God himself declared that he reflected his own oneness, and he called Avraham one, as we find in Ezekiel 33, verse 24. One was Avraham, an accolade given by Torah to none other. He connected people. He invented the first social media, not virtual but personal. He canvassed and met more people personally than anyone in his time. After the incident of his deliverance from the fiery furnace became known, he was sought out by peoples of every language who brought their children to him to be educated about God. Avraham brought the clear knowledge and conviction of the oneness of God back into the world, which had all but disappeared since the time of Adam. Thus the Midrash states, homiletically, meaning not literally, but to illustrate this concept of the connection between Avraham's work and Adam's original mandate, the Midrash states, Adam was the world's firstborn. He wore the priestly garments. When he died, the garments were passed to Avraham. In other words, for 20 generations, no one wore those garments. No one called out in the name of the one God to make his name known to the whole world. Noah rebuked his generation, but he didn't make God's name known. Avraham taught anyone who would listen, that the goal of life is to have a personal connection with God, an ongoing dialogue with the Master of the universe. So now, will you please open up your hearts in the deepest way? This is so deep. As you know, we believe that the weekly cycle of the Torah readings are not coincidental or incidental, but rather reflect the very reality of our existence with exquisite and divinely ordained timing, because the Torah portions are the story of our own as yet unfolding lives. During this very week, the week of our meeting Avraham Avinu, Abraham our father, whose life's work was teaching the whole world that there is indeed a God, there's a news item this week. Headline on CNN. There is no God, says Stephen Hawking in his final book. The item goes on as follows. There is no God. That's the conclusion of the celebrated physicist Stephen Hawking, whose final book is published Tuesday. The book, which was completed by his family after his death, presents answers to the questions that Hawking said he received most during his time on Earth. Hawking, considered one of the most brilliant scientists of his generation, died in March at the age of 76. There is no God. No one directs the universe, he writes in Brief Answers to the Big Question. I know we talked about Einstein last week, and I don't want you to think I'm going to be talking about a physicist every week, but this is amazing, because Stephen Hawking's denial of God is reaching out to us this week, even from beyond the grave. Hawking said that science can, and I quote, everything's a quote, science can explain the universe without the need for a creator. Did you get that? Without the need for a creator. So I'm thinking about Avraham, who looked at the universe and concluded that there must be a creator. And again, I'm wondering, where does that desire come from? And I'm thinking about Hawking, who didn't need a creator. But in a video interview with Larry King before his death, Stephen Hawking said, quote, "Gravity and quantum theory caused the universe to be created spontaneously out of nothing. Because there is such a law as gravity, the universe can and will create itself from nothing." So I'm thinking, wow, Avraham and Stephen Hawking are polar opposites, but obviously not just the two individuals, but as archetypes. Hawking said that because there is a law such as gravity, the universe can and will create itself from nothing. So the interviewer responded, how did the law of gravity come into existence? Hawking answered, gravity is a consequence of the M theory, which is the only possible unified theory. Your question is like saying, why is 2 + 2 4? The scientific account is complete. Theology is unnecessary. So Stephen Hawking is saying that gravity came into being as a result of the M theory. Now, you may not be aware of what the M theory is, so for your edification, I'll share with you the Wikipedia entry for the non-technical layman's definition of the M theory. There's also an M theory for M theory users, but this is the non-technical entry. Quote, in non-technical terms, M theory presents an idea about the basic substance of the universe. So far, there is no experimental evidence that M theory is a description of the real world. Nevertheless, it's the leading contender for a universal theory of everything that unifies gravity with other forces such as electromagnetism. M theory is the only theory known to elegantly unify quantum mechanics with general relativity's gravitational force in a mathematically consistent way. In comparison, other theories such as loop quantum gravity are considered less elegant because they posit gravity to be completely different from forces such as the electromagnetic force, unquote. So, are you getting this in the deepest way? There is no experimental evidence that the M theory is a description of the real world, says the article, but Stephen Hawking has no problem with naming it as the cause of creation, which of course means that there is no meaning to life, meaning to created man, and that everything is meaningless, which of course means that you needn't take any responsibility. The opposite of an Abraham, who is called Eitan HaEzrachi, a pseudonym used for Abraham in Psalm 89, which literally means the steadfast citizen, because he was known as the citizen of the world, because knowledge of God brought with it responsibility for the whole world. And it also means that not only is everything meaningless, but everything is also random, and thus the human condition is bleak. But what about Joni Mitchell singing about tears and fears and feeling proud to say I love you right out loud, dreams and schemes and circus crowds? What about everything in the universe, the grand, the small, the detailed, winter evenings by the fire, summer breezes, or as Louis Armstrong sang, bright blessed day, dark sacred night? It's all nothing, from nothing, and going nowhere. According to the M theory, that is. So open up your hearts in deepest way now, because this is where it gets very deep. The Midrash relates this detail about Avraham's spiritual awakening. This is the Midrashic account. In the morning, he saw the sun rising in the east, so he thought, this must be God. This must be the king who created me. He prayed to the sun all that day. But in the evening, when he saw the sun set and the moon rise, he said, "This must also govern over that other god I was praying to, because it became dark and it doesn't shine any longer." So he prayed to the moon all night long. Then in the morning, when he saw the darkness pass and the eastern sky brightening, he said, "All these must have one king that governs over all of them." The Holy One, blessed be He, saw Avraham's desire, and so he revealed himself to him and spoke to him. This is not merely some children's story or anecdotal, nor was Avraham some Neanderthal who gaped in fear at the sky, or some primitive looking for something, anything to worship. This is a reference to the struggle against the mindset of Stephen Hawking. The Midrashic description of Avraham's interest in astronomy and his search of the heavens can best be understood in the light of Maimonides' statement in his Guide for the Perplexed, that Avraham understood, are you getting this? Are you listening? That Avraham understood that the whole world was mistaken, and the thing which caused their mistake was their worship of the stars and planets, until they lost the truth altogether. What does it mean to worship the stars and the planets? Do you think this midrash is archaic? Do you think it only means to prostrate before them and to offer them bowls of gruel? It's the worship of science with the Creator neatly and conveniently removed. Stephen Hawking said, "Science can explain the universe without the need for a creator." Who needs the creator when we have science, when we have the M theory? Is that not a form of worship? Indeed, all the idolatry and cults that Avraham was fighting in his time, all the idolatry that he was fighting against still exists in this world today in some form or another. But Avraham knew deep down that there was someone to love. Isaiah 41 and verse 8, "But you, Israel, my servant, Jacob, whom I have chosen, the seed of Abraham, who loved me." So listen very carefully now. I'm reading from Isaiah, chapter 40, from verse 18. "To whom can you liken God, and what likeness can you attribute to him? To the idol cast by a blacksmith, which a goldsmith overlays with gold and a silversmith with silver chains? Do you not realize? Have you not heard? Has it not been told to you from the beginning? Have you not contemplated the foundations of the earth? It is he who sits on the circumference of the earth, with its inhabitants like grasshoppers, who spreads the heavens like a curtain, and stretches them like a tent to dwell in, who turns governors into nothingness, who makes judges of the land into naught. To whom can you liken me, that I should be his equal, says the Holy One. Raise your eyes on high and see who created these things. He brings forth their legions by numbers. He calls each of them by name." So on the words that I just read in verse 26, who created these things? In Hebrew, me, the word who created these things, the Holy Zohar offers this teaching. God took the word me, meaning who, and put it into the word Elah, meaning these, and the word Elohim was formed, meaning God. He took the ma, meaning what, and he put it in the word bara, meaning created, and the word Avraham was formed. What is this letter manipulation? This is the secret, says the Zohar, of the verse in Genesis chapter 2 and verse 4. These are the generations of the heavens and the earth, behibaram, when he created them. That's a very unusual word that we find nowhere else in Torah. Genesis 2:4. These are the generations of the heavens and the earth when he created them. In Hebrew, behibaram is the letters of the word Avraham. And the Zohar says, this teaches us, that the heavens and the earth were hanging by a thread and waiting until the name of Avraham was created. This teaching is very deep. It's not some word game or simply the sage's praise of Avraham. This teaching is informing us that the universe was waiting for an Avraham, and he in turn is even alluded to in the creation narrative itself, because he is the one who was looking for the Creator. And what would creation be? And what would it be worth without man, the purpose of creation, looking for the Creator? Eitan ha'ezrachi, to be a responsible, caring, seeking citizen of the world, is the message of the life of Abraham, because the Torah's message is that this universe was only created for the sake of people who are looking for its creator.